And the 2022 color of the year is... Every single year, every major paint company releases their pick for color of the year. And I absolutely cannot wait for the new selections to be announced. Unfortunately, I don't have any insider information as to what the color is going to be, but I was able to spark a bit of conversation on our Instagram about what you all want the next color to be. Even though I talked about what I want it to be, this video is all about what I think is actually going to be chosen, and I brought none other than Nick Lewis on board to help me out with today's video. So smash that like button if you like Canadian collaborations on paint color. So before we get into Nick and I's picks, let's briefly go back in time and take a look at what the previous color of the years were by Benjamin Moore. Back in 2012, we had Withe Blue, which is kind of interesting when you consider last year's color of the year, but more on that later on. 2013 brought us Lemon Sorbet, which is a creamy yellow that was really meant to harmonize with a variety of different pastel colors of varying different color hues. A year later, we go from warm to cool with Breath of Fresh Air, another pastel color, but one that is clearly a blue. So already we see a lot of back and forth, warm and cool from one year to the next. 2015 was a fantastic year because it popularized a very usable green color called Guilford Green, which remains one of my favorites to this day. 2016 was actually a bit of a shock to all of us because the color of the year was simply white. Not really a particular color hue at all, which at first seemed like a bit of a cop-out by Benjamin Moore. But as time went on, we started to realize how good of a choice it really was. In 2017, we got Shadow. So they didn't quite go from white to black, but got pretty close with this really dark shade of purple. This signified the transition from minimalism to maximalism, or at least the start of it, because the next color was pretty much as bold as you can get with Caliente. I love this color, first of all. And as far as I know, it was the first Benjamin Moore Affinity color to be selected as color of the year. So that's the line of Benjamin Moore paint colors with the color code AF, and they were all released alongside the Aura paint line, which is kind of their upper echelon product. It's probably my favorite red still to this day, and there's rumblings that a reddish tone might be making a bit of a comeback, but more on that later. 2019 takes things in a very different direction, a direction that I'm sure we're all familiar with at this point. We got gray. More specifically, Metropolitan, another affinity color, AF690. In terms of grays, it's pretty neutral, although I would say it kind of leans a little towards the cool side, and that became quite popular in many interiors, unfortunately to the color's detriment in a lot of cases. 2020 brought us First Light, which is a light, slightly dusty pink color that was supposed to represent optimism and revitalization. It certainly wasn't a color that's really easy to use in a lot of situations, but it was a pretty accurate choice because we started seeing a lot of pink start to pop up all over Pinterest. I know I did. This brings us to last year's color of the year, or I guess the current color of the year, which is Aegean Teal. So when we look at the whole span of the last nearly 10 years, we kind of started with that bluish green and ended with it. Although Aegean Teal is definitely the deeper, darker variation. So Nick, what was your favorite color of the year from the last decade?
Hi everyone. First of all, thank you James for including me in this video. I always love a good collab with you. James, in terms of my favorite color of the year of years past, I mean, I don't know, do I choose to go super boring? Do I go with my favorite white paint, which is simply white? Yeah, that's kind of a really safe, boring choice. I mean, I think that, Caliente was super interesting. And I mean, teal was a really interesting choice last year. I overall actually quite liked the palette last year. But, I don't know. I think for most people, simply white is a pretty awesome choice for color of the year. So I think that might have been the safest color they possibly could have chosen. But I bet they've sold more simply white than they have any of the other colors of the year of the last decade combined. So I would say that was a really almost like it was such a safe choice that it was an interesting and great choice for them to have made. So I don't know, probably an unpopular opinion to pick something so boring, but there you go. Simply white is my favorite color of the year that Benjamin Moore has picked in the last 10 years. So safe that it's interesting. Does that make sense?
Why, yes it does. For me, it has to be a tie between Guilford Green and Shadow. Guilford Green because it sort of spawns the beginning of green-beige. I love a green-beige combination. That's a cool way of saying combination, by the way, so now you know. And Shadow on the other hand, was just an awesome choice because it really seemed to come out of nowhere. Quite literally the opposite of what Simply White was the year prior. I really saw it as Benjamin Moore daring us to go bold and deep and dark with our color choices, especially considering the ways that people were using it, not just as an accent wall, but as a hallway color, for example. Super fun. Although Caliente is also my favorite red, so I guess I kind of want to pick all of them. But anyway, let's get into what Nick and I think Benjamin Moore is going to pick. Now, there's quite literally thousands of colors out there to choose from, so there's a pretty decent chance we're going to get it wrong. But why not give it a bash? Based on the past choices and how they all line up, I'd be very surprised if Benjamin Moore picked a cooler color this year, considering they picked one last year. I also think it would make sense for them to pick a color from their newest color collection, the Aura Color Stories, or those CSP colors I like to talk about. And finally, I think the colors should have a really marketable name to put it all over their branding. So, Hannah Banana? Out of the question. What kind of name is that? The color I'm going to go with is Golden Thread, mainly because it's a pretty nuanced, rich gold that also introduces a bit of brown and a touch of green into the mix. It looks to be shaded with some gray or black colorant, but it isn't, because CSP colors are notorious for using many different colorants to create the effect of gray without actually using gray. It's deep, rich, and regal, and it also doubles down on the popularity of those warmer tones that are really emerging again. Also, like Nick, I definitely see blacks and off blacks everywhere in design. So I'll also just throw in CSP 30 Espresso Bean into the mix just for fun. Not quite a true black, but it's definitely the blackest color in the CSP collection. So let's hear Nick's pick, or should I say picks.
Okay, so what an interesting topic for a video. What would Benjamin Moore do for color of the year this year? I mean, okay, so I'm gonna sort of cheat and I'm going to say, what would be my, I'm gonna pick like three, but like I'm gonna actually pick one. Okay, so here's a few directions I think they could go. Number one, I think this like warmer neutral, something like muslin, which as many of you know, is something that was included in their color palette of the year last year. So I don't think they're gonna pick it, but I think they could go the route of something similar to muslin, basically leaning into those really soft, creamy sort of neutrals. That would be kind of a safe choice, and that would be something that would feel very, very on trend for this year. And I think going forward for the next couple of years. I don't really see that changing. Not a particularly adventurous choice, but there you go. That might be, sometimes, I mean, they chose Simply White not very long ago, so I don't know how adventurous they're gonna be this year. Then the other route they could go, which I think is a bit more daring, but I think honestly could be the direction they go, is something like Onyx, a really beautiful deep black. It's got a little bit of warmth to it, but overall it's a very black paint. I think it's really, really cool. I love Onyx, probably one of my favorite go-to black paints. I think they could go that route because black is everywhere. We're seeing all black bedrooms, all black kitchens. I swear black kitchens are the new white kitchens. Am I right? Like they are just taking over. I feel like a lot of people are going for this really dark black look. I think they're gonna lean into something more of like a terracotta, or maybe something like my pick, which is ultimately what I'm going to guess, and I will be super wrong, but that's okay, is something like Arroyo Red. Something like a really sort of dark brick red color, maybe even something like a terracotta. That's kind of my prediction. I think red for a long time has been sort of sidelined in interior design, and green has definitely had a moment. It could also go like I've picked all the colors at this point, so this isn't really a guess, but like, you know, they could go the green route, but I don't think they will because of the color of the year last year going with a teal. So I think they're gonna go for red. I feel like red, it's a misunderstood, often maligned color in interior design, but I think going for these really deep, beautiful, warm reds, something like Arroyo Red would be a really adventurous, interesting choice for them to make this year.
Our conversation on Instagram led a lot of people into believing that a rusty orange color might be chosen, and I can totally see that being a thing. Hey people, today's episode of IGTV Paint People Thingy, I won't talk about a specific color specifically, but I wanted to brainstorm about the upcoming color of the year. If you want to see the color that I personally want to be chosen, don't forget to check out our video on IGTV. Big thank you to Nick for joining me again. It's always such a pleasure to have my fellow Canadian to chat color with. If you don't know his channel, now you know. And you really should know by now. Anyways, goodbye.